I simply want to share a few words this evening about remembrance. I have to finish some words which I've worked on recently. I'm not sure it counts as a poem, but it is a poetic gesture. So remembrance. Why are we doing this? Well, in one sense, arguably, it's because we want to acknowledge that as a result of individual and corporate violence, there are people who are no longer with us, whose lives, whose dignity has been snuffed out. We want to acknowledge that as a result of the structural violence of our patriarchal culture, there are people who have made the decision to end their own lives. We might want to use the V word, victims. And there is a time and place for that. I want to remind us, if any of us need to be reminded, that we're doing this tonight because of persons, because of human beings, some of whom might be our friends, some of whom we might have stood in line with whilst they've been receiving abuse, some of whom have had their dignity stripped, who've had their subjectivity removed because of the stupidity, the anger and the fear, often of people who should know better. We do this in part because we acknowledge that, well, in some respects, some of the gains that perhaps many of us believed had already been won. We thought, well, actually, we're heading in a progressive direction. Well, actually, events, in part on this side of the Atlantic, events on the other side of the Atlantic, indicate that perhaps the world is not travelling in the direction of welcome, inclusion and hope that many of us would wish for. We hope and pray, I hope, that with the election of the likes of Trump and Pence, that it is a kind of last flickering of a certain kind of desire on the part of many people for the man-baby leader, you know, the one who will protect people who are utterly scared of difference and change and movements in this world towards welcome and inclusion. But it's very easy to do that, isn't it, from a position of privilege where we know that actually there will be this night people possibly not that far from here, but certainly in very many countries, afraid and terrified for their lives. People like my friend Gwen Fry, who is a trans priest in the Episcopal Church, who in her situation in the United States has found actually an increasing welcome for her ministry, but is currently terrified on a daily basis, not least because of the verbal violence that she's receiving, simply because she's a trans woman. I myself have recently received a death threat. Someone rang me up at home one evening, and it was transphobic in its nature. It was vile and unpleasant. And we know that there is, in some respects, something in our midst that seems to have been permitted again by certain events that have happened in the public realm. But when we remember, we do something more than just a work of memory. Actually, we participate in a work of constitution and making and creation. It's about constituting a community in solidarity. Shortly, we're going to be celebrating a Eucharist. Now, hands up here, you know, I don't know exactly what's going on in the mystery of the Eucharist. It is a mystery. But it seems to me that when we talk of remembrance in that setting, we are not just talking about a memorial act. It is a remembering. It is a bringing together of the broken body of Christ in solidarity and unity and hope. And when we remember people tonight, those names of people who have died in the past 12 months, we are not simply using those names for our purposes. We are uniting ourselves with them, in solidarity with them. Building a community which is shaped not simply about yesterday or today, but the hope of tomorrow. Now you might think, well, that's all fine and dandy, and that all sounds very spiritual, Rachel. But actually, that's precisely the kind of action and work which generates change. Because none of us, friends, well, we're individuals. We are often in places of great vulnerability and fear, and we cannot do it alone. But we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. A great cloud of witnesses who we must remember, in part to honour, in part to recover, but also actually for us to be called to account, so that we live on that promise that Christ offers each and every one of us. Christ is in solidarity with those who are being pushed out of the world's structures of power and authority. And he is there, she is there, because she knows what it is to be pushed out of the world herself on a cross. In solidarity with people who, well, as our gospel said tonight, are categorized as criminals. We don't know what their stories were. But we know that we live in a world which so readily either criminalizes or makes anathema or makes other those who don't fit the nice, neat, safe patterns. And we, friends, are amongst them, I hope, because actually that's where God is. I'd like to finish with this work of, I don't know whether it's poetic liturgy or poetic gesture. I've called it a checklist for remembrance. Remember. Remember them. Remember your siblings. Remember those who've been beaten up, threatened with death, who've been killed simply for being themselves. Remember those who've taken their own lives. Remember. Remember you are beloved. Oh, please remember you are beloved. Remember and resist. Be in solidarity with friends and allies. Remember that the world is full of glorious life. Remember, you don't have to be a representative of anything. Remember you are beloved. Oh, please remember you are beloved. Remember you too are remembered and written in the book of love. Remember, if you think it's time to end it all, one thread of hope is enough. Remember, true religions don't happen from above. Remember, stand your ground. Remember, sometimes it's okay to be angry. God is angry too. Remember to offer that fierce grace and love and wild passion that brings hope to birth. Remember, be no one's victim. Remember, you don't have to do it all alone. Remember, you are beloved. Oh, please remember, you are beloved. Remember, you are a representative of the unrepresentable. Everyone is. Everyone. Remember, our diversity, our divergence, and our solidarity is a cause for hope. Remember. Remember, we are beloved. Remember, love will transform the world.